You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 303, Media Blitz and Mando 2. So this is a bonus show that's coming to you this week. So you're on top of this one. You should have another one here in a couple days, and if you're a Patreon member, you're going to get another one here at the end of the week as well. So all pretty exciting stuff. But we felt like recently, last week, there was a number of articles that had come out for both Vanity Fair, Entertainment Weekly was doing some things. If you've had a chance to go on social media, you probably saw a lot of media clips of the cast and crew doing tons and tons of interviews with just about everyone. And so we did our first preview show last week, but we just felt like there was just so much that was going on with a lot of this stuff that was getting released on the outskirts of stuff that we probably should come back and maybe kind of do a dedicated show to that. So that's really kind of what this is focused on. On top of that, as we mentioned last episode, Jonesy really hasn't had a chance to talk about The Mandalorian, and I'm sure he's got a lot to talk about. So while we're not going to really get into all of the full details of Mandalorian and break down every episode or anything, I thought it would be cool just to kind of get his take on things and maybe talk a little bit about what's really stood out for him. So I'm talking about him like he's not here, but he's actually here. So please welcome to the show the Mandalorian himself, Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome back to the show, sir.
No, you're the Manuel DeLorean. So
I am the Manuel DeLorean.
So for those that don't know, pull back the curtain just a minute here. About every other week, well, no, every other, I don't know how often we're doing this right now, but Albert always puts, we have these little names where we record and we come up with really silly, screwy names sometimes. And he's done the Manuel DeLorean a couple of times now, which is, I won't call it clever because I don't want to give you an inflated ego. But sure, I do like it, though.
That's the last thing I need.
Yeah, right. Yeah. You do have an ego problem at times, so.
Not really. But this is, that's for anybody that really wants to know. My middle name is Manuel. So that's what that is. It's not anything derogatory. It's just, that's what my name is. So I was like, hey, cool. Wife thinks it's completely stupid and silly, but hey, I love it. So, and joining us this week, we actually have a very special guest with us tonight. So she is a member of our Discord family, and she's been a longtime supporter. I think she came in right around the time that we started doing some of the Last Jedi stuff, just before that launch. So
bless you.
Like one of the two people that came in onto the show there. So I'm talking about none other than Miss Makayla. Makayla, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yeah. We, from time to time, we brought people on, did guest spots and that kind of thing. But I thought it'd be interesting because I know we've had a chance to kind of talk on Discord. And I think you had mentioned that your trilogy, like what you really like is the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I think, Jonesy and I are kind of both in that same boat. But I thought it'd be cool to start getting maybe a little bit of different dynamic here as well, kind of talking about that stuff. So before we go any further, I just want to say maybe if you could just kind of talk about how did you get into Star Wars? Like what was the first experience, and just how big of a fan are you? And I don't want to steal your thunder, but I know obviously we follow you on Instagram. We've seen some of the cosplay stuff that you've done as well, but just how much do you kind of eat, breathe, and live Star Wars?
Well, you asked, kind of how I got into it. I'm going to give encouragement to all of you dads out there or moms who are big fans and are forcing your kids into it. I quote forcing loosely, but my dad is who I blame for Star Wars. I kind of got into it more as I grew up too, with the sequel trilogy coming out and kind of being able to be around for it, getting hyped for it, seeing all the news, getting to participate in the conversation about it. So that's kind of how I separated myself from my dad's love of Star Wars. I still love the original trilogy. I like the prequels, but the sequel trilogy is really my jam.
Yeah.
So how were you exposed to them then? Were you introduced with the sequel trilogy, or did you have access to the other ones first and then kind of got into these? They seemed just more interesting.
We had the original trilogy on VHS, and my dad's seen every single one in theaters, So it was kind of something where the original trilogy was always around. And we had like the novelization, and we had like the picture dictionary, or, the visual dictionary. And so I grew up with that kind of stuff just around. But again, it was just getting into it myself was the sequel trilogy.
Nice. That's really good to hear, because I often question whether or not I'm being too pushy and trying to force my children into Star Wars. And it's funny because as they've gotten older, like some of them are starting to kind of pull back a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're just, becoming more aware of other stuff out there, right? So they're kind of broadening their horizons, and which is all cool. But then I do have like one, which is actually my daughter of all of them that and I think I've mentioned this before on the air. Of the 5 kids, she is the one that seems to be the most genuinely interested in Star Wars, even though she's probably the one I haven't pushed it on the most.
Yeah.
Like I really have kind of backed off, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's something there or something to say about that. But yeah, she seems to be the one that's really kind of like genuinely interested, comes and sits down with me and, knows the characters and asks me questions and that sort of thing, where the other kids are just kind of like, yeah, it's there in Star Wars, and dad loves it and he's kind of crazy. But, yeah, it's just weird that she's the one that I haven't pushed, and she's the one that's probably the most attracted to it. So parenting done right. All right, well, let's do this. Let's get into, I thought we could, so we're not going to do, we normally would do like a news section at this time, but because this is going to be quite a bit of just news really with all that, the Vanity Fair and Entertainment Weekly stuff that released, I thought we just kind of jump right into the main 2 parts of the show, and we're going to start with The Mandalorian. So Jonesy, Makayla, I know you guys have both had a chance to watch it. I think you guys are both caught up now, if I'm not mistaken. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So, Jonesy, I'm going to start with you. Maybe let's just talk about. So there were 5 episodes into this now. As of this recording, we are 5 episodes into The Mandalorian. But just overall, are you enjoying the series? And let's talk about Baby Yoda, because I just want to cut to the chase. Is he not the cutest Star Wars character to date? And if you disagree, how do you feel about being wrong?
It's difficult to argue that statement right now, because
Yes, okay.
everybody around, all they do is like scream Baby Yoda, even if they don't know who the character is or what's going on.
Yeah.
They're like, Baby Yoda. And I've witnessed this like 5 different times. So the evidence is overwhelming, unfortunately, that I mean, Porgs were doing it for a while, but no, one little green dude.
Move over, Bacon.
Dude, I'm telling you.
Something meatier.
Those little fluffy little ears.
Yeah.
I do have a question for you guys, though, with Baby Yoda, and I've been meaning to ask this for weeks, right? Okay. So I was trying to do the math around if he's 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's still basically a baby.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was trying to do the math here. So if Yoda was 900, right? Let's just say he was 900. If we equate that to like a human age, and let's just say it's 90, so you get a factor of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem, that seems pretty reasonable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw somebody do the math on this, and I think it came out to like the equivalent of an 18-year-old is really technically, at 50 years old, it would be the equivalent of like somebody who's 18.
See, and I was just doing really basic math. So it would be, a 50-year-old would be like a 5-year-old, which would get him closer to what we see on screen, but he really is still acting more like an 18-month-year-old to not quite 2, right? Something like that.
Yeah, because he's like cooing.
Right.
Yeah, he's not speaking. He's cooing. And if you turn on with the subtitles, that's all it ever says. It says cooing, 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 cooing. So that's like infant stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yet he's walking around, he's sipping soup at one point, standing there. So he's definitely got a more mature personality than like an infant. I don't know. It is weird. I think it's situational, and he's as cute as he needs to be in the moment. And not as cute or infantile in other moments. It just kind of really depends on what they're kind of going for.
The only time he's been a distraction for me, though, was in chapter 5, because he was handled so much and passed around, and kind of the babysitter aspect of the, I don't know what she was, the ship repair person. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it just, all that activity with him kind of struck me a little bit different. It was just, it started to show the holes a little bit in the prop and the character a little bit. But I mean, overall, still pretty enjoyable. Although I don't know that I liked that episode, that chapter 5, quite as much as other people did, especially after how strong like 3 and 4 were.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I mean, how much stuff was going in on those.
Yeah.
So, Makayla, what's been like a standout episode for you, or maybe just even a standout moment for you so far in The Mandalorian?
Well, that's easy for me. The scene at the end of episode 1 when you've got the Mandalorian reaching down and Baby Yoda like reaching up, like that was so like monumental for me for some reason. I know that there was like talk, like Mike was saying, oh, he's in it for the money. He's only in it for the money kind of thing. But I totally disagreed with that. And seeing that scene kind of was already giving the Mandalorian depth, I think. And that was only the first episode. So, and watching that relationship grow is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what we want, right? From Star Wars, that's what we want. I mean, I get it. I mean, there are people out there, and I won't disagree with Mike on it, because I can certainly see the appeal of having somebody like that. But I think we talked about this, he and I, one of the shows that we did, where the show's very different at this point for me, like terms of like, again, I really didn't have any expectations, but had you told me that the show would be 5 episodes in and really the primary focus is around, him and a baby and how he's trying to protect this baby, that's not at all what I was thinking it was going to be, right? But to your point, I think it shows another level of dimension to him that we weren't expecting, which is cool. We want that, right? We want our characters to be deep and be able to grow and, be multidimensional and not just kind of a straight up kind of one-dimensional type character. Although, if that was the show too, maybe that would be cool. But I think, again, they're probably playing the long game here and ensuring that they're creating a character that's going to be able to withstand and be very interesting 2, 3, 4, 5 seasons down the road. I mean, I don't know how long they're going to go with this thing, but they want to be able to kind of set that in stone.
So, Makayla, did you have what was your expectation going into the show then? We got to share a lot of our points of view on it, but what was your expectation coming in about what type of story, or what did you want to see out of this?
I was thinking it was going to be a lot more like fighting bad guys, hand-to-hand action, more of like how episode 3 was. So seeing more of like the aspect of him, traversing, all these places instead of just ending up somewhere and taking out the bad guys. I didn't really know what to expect, but those were kind of the little things I was thinking I was going to see.
Yeah, so maybe more bounty hunter.
Yeah, for sure. I thought
like true bounty hunter, in it for the kill, in it for the hire kind of thing. Yeah. So any other big moments? So Jonesy, what was yours? Like, what's been the biggest thing for you that's still?
I have to agree with Mike a little bit here that seeing the Mandalorian culture start to surface of where they're at this time, and the way that they have, in my opinion, at least captured some of the spirit of what I enjoyed about the Mandalorians in the EU, and especially in the Republic Commando books, which I've voiced 100 times. I'm a huge fan of with Karen Travis and what she did with those. But to be able to bring some of those elements into this, based compared to what we saw with the Clone Wars and with Rebels, I think is really, I like it, because now you have this really almost not fractured society, but this underground society now, and how they're making do, and how they have to be very limited with their numbers, and all the backstory that we don't know yet. And then how they're crafting the armor and the discussions they have. And I mean, we have a tagline for everything for the first 2 episodes, right? With "This is the way." But
yeah,
but I think just that getting that flavor and that idea of the lore, bringing that forward from and borrowing those elements, I think has really been enjoyable to me. I think the things I'm curious about as we start to push further on is that we kind of introduce ourselves to a character and then they more or less go away. Is it Kuil?
Yeah.
Kuil? Nick Nolte's character.
Kuil.
Yeah, he went away. I mean, he came back, but Cara Dune, one and done. But clearly, we're going to get to the end, like to a future episode here towards the end, where he's going to have to assemble a team, right? And everybody's going to have to get back together. And I think that's been one point that's been a little. I'm trying to reconcile. I'm trying to figure out quite how I feel about it, of it becoming a team-based show at some point, potentially, rather than just kind of the lone gunman type of deal, and teaming up with all of these, all these other people. And not that I have any problem with these characters. I think they're going to make it work pretty well, but a little bit different than what I was expecting at one point. Yeah,
no, that's fair. I mean, it does seem like it's kind of a revolving door with some of these characters, and there's certainly a lot of things that I think we've liked about these characters, but they don't stick around for very long. And that may be stylized. That could be part of it, right? They may be going for like a more comic book type style, or more serialized, like the old TV shows, that sort of thing. Or maybe there's a larger strategy here. Some of these characters may come back again, like IG-11. Like I really loved IG-11 in that first episode. I'm like, wow, this is going to really be cool. And we talked about a kind of like a buddy episode kind of thing. And then we've not seen him since. And I don't know that we're going to. I would hope we do. Mm-hmm. We've gotten, if you've seen any of the trailers or any of the previews for upcoming episodes, we know that Grief comes back, right? So, how does he play into it? We know he's going to join up with some kind of band of, mercenaries, and they're going to be like this little ragtag group of doing something. I'm not sure just what yet, but it's just there's a lot of characters that they've kind of thrown at us in this very condensed 8 episodes of season 1. So
yeah, and if I can go,
very interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, and if I can go on a tangent real fast. So everybody knows I'm a fan of the sideshow toys, right? The hot toys. I've got the Obi-Wan. I've got a First Order trooper. The heavy Mandalorian trooper, that's right. The heavy man, the one played by Jon Favreau,
mm-hmm.
is awesome. If you haven't gone to look at it, go take a look at it, because it looks like it's going to be worth every penny that they're going to charge and clean you out for this figure. But just go over to Sideshow Toys. We're not affiliated, anything like that, but it's worth It's worth the look to go look at it and just see the amazing detail they have on it. And it looks like it's going to be a really fun figure. But anyway, a small sidebar on that one. But when I saw that the other day, it really wowed me of like, wow, I might have to think about that one.
Yeah. Makayla, do you do any collecting of that sort of thing?
I do.
Do you have deep pockets like Jonesy?
Well, maybe not the deep pockets.
She does.
Part,
all right.
All right.
So I like to collect the Funko Pops. So I've got a couple of those that I absolutely adore. I like the cute aspect.
And they're so cheap. Like they're inexpensive. Sorry. Well, maybe they're kind of cheap,
well,
too, but they're very inexpensive. So like, I find myself walking in and I see one. Like we were at Five Below. I don't know if they have those stores where you guys are at.
Yeah.
But essentially it's like the dollar store, only it's $5. And anyways, I went in there and they had like these Funko Pops from like Solo, Star Wars story. So they had like Chewbacca and Kira and everybody else, but it's so tempting for $5. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it'd be really cool to have, but where the heck am I going to put these? Because I'm out of room. I have absolutely no room on any part of, my little man cave, one-dimensional space that allocated per my wife. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, they are pretty inexpensive.
It's called a closet, dude.
Oh, yeah, true. Or I could take storage, right?
There you go.
Buy $5
Rent out
Funko
a
Pop
one.
and pay like $60 for storage and just store them there. That's always an option too. So, hey, last question before we move on to the news stuff. So, bit of controversy here, and there's been quite a bit of debate that we've had now on the on Discord here the last 2-3 days. Well, technically since Friday, since the episode aired. But at the very end of episode 5, we are introduced to a potential character that we do not see the face of. And this is a spoiler, obviously, if you've not had a chance to watch the show. I don't know why you're listening to this show, because this is like 5-6 days in. But if you haven't had a chance to watch it, we're going to spoil this. There at the very end, one of the very last scenes, we see somebody kind of walking up to Ming-Na's, what's your character's name? No, I'm trying to think of her character's name, though.
Oh.
It's Ming-Na Wen, but I don't remember her character's name now. Anyways.
Yeah, draw a blank.
Yeah. Yeah, she's laying there dead. And, well, maybe. And we hear what sounds like spurs, like somebody walking up to the fob. And the controversy that's really kind of spurred about is who that character was. Now, the more obvious one, I think, if you're a diehard Star Wars fan, you probably heard the spurs and immediately thought of Boba Fett. There's a case to be made if you're a Clone Wars person. Cad Bane is probably somebody that came to mind as well. But and I can tell you right now, most people don't even, like, as I've been talking about this the last 3 or 4 days, most people had no idea that Boba Fett even had spurs, because it is only in one scene, unless you're a really big fan of him and read into like the Wikipedia stuff and all that. Mm-hmm. Unless you are paying really close attention to that one particular scene that's all of about 3 seconds in Empire Strikes Back, right after Vader says, we'd be honored if you join us on Cloud City. For 3 seconds, if that, maybe it's even like a half a second, 2 seconds, you hear the spurs in that moment. And that is the only time that you technically hear it. that obviously caused a lot of controversy about whether or not that's Boba Fett. The other candidates have been Moff Gideon, who's played by what's his name? Is it Carlos? What's his last name? Esposito.
Yeah,
the guy that was in Breaking Bad. Yeah. So we know he's going to be in the show. We haven't seen him yet, but he plays a character named Moff Gideon. That's been a particular candidate. We've talked about Cobb Vanth, who was the quote Mandalorian, who was part of the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig. And I guess some of the other candidates are Grief is maybe being another one, that sort of thing. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys because I just kind of want to get both of your opinions on it. Makayla, I'll start with you. When you saw that at the very end, first off, I guess the big question is, did it click that could potentially be Boba Fett? And now that you've had a chance to kind of digest all of that, do you have a preference as to who it is, or any kind of theory as to who you think that person is there at the very end? Again, we don't see the face. All we see are the feet and that particular spur sound.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't think of Boba Fett immediately until I got onto Discord. And then, I realized that's right, thinking back to that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Am I for or against his return? That's the question. I'm a little bit against it, only because I feel like that'd be taking away from our Mandalorian. I don't know what that would mean for the rest of his series. I don't know. I think he's the main guy, and to bring in Boba Fett, it's like, oh well, then who are we going to be rooting for? Essentially,
I think it's a great point. No. Yeah, I agree completely, because then you have to answer all the questions that come as a result. How did he get out of the Sarlacc pit? What has he been doing for ABC years? And how does he fit? And all of your attention steers away from our main character. So I'm completely in agreement there. I don't think you bring Boba Fett to this series really at all. I don't really see I don't think you have a need for it either.
Well, yeah. And I've been pretty vocal on Discord about it. As much as I don't want it to be Boba Fett, for the exact reasons I think you both are saying as well, I think he upstages The Mandalorian, and especially given we're only 5 episodes in, and I know we love Pedro Pascal and what he's been able to do with the character, and we love the show, we love Baby Yoda and all that. The minute you introduce something like Boba Fett, you're bringing a whole lot of history and I just feel like he's going to upstage him. And then let's just say you can get beyond that. This is the point that I was trying to make this morning, as I was driving to Dallas, chatting on Discord. But anyways,
Albert Padilla.
I know it's terrible. I made an entire GIF while I was driving today too. But anyways, that's not the point. Jeff, sorry. Thank you for the correction. So even if you got past all that, right? Suspension of disbelief. You figure out you figure out a way to explain how he got out of the Sarlacc pit and where he's been for 5 years, and suddenly, why he's there. The motive is a thing that I can't get past. Mm-hmm. What is he trying to do? What would be his motive to go after the Mandalorian? Because in the last 3-5 years now, you've got to think that he's heard of other Mandalorians out there. So why is this one in particular interesting to him? You could say that maybe he's been landlocked on Tatooine this entire time, and suddenly there's now another Mandalorian on Tatooine, and that's sparked his interest. But then you've got Cobb Vanth, who's been there as well, right? And we know he's been out on Tatooine, the planet, not necessarily near Mos Espa or Mos Eisley, but he's been around there. So why wouldn't he have? Or maybe he has. We don't know for sure. But I don't understand why. The motive is the big question for me, is why it would be Boba Fett. What has he got to prove? And I think some of the guys and girls were talking today about, there's probably a story there where there's a kind of passing of the torch in some way, and maybe there's a big fight, and now there's really one true Mandalorian. But even that doesn't feel like that goes with the character that we've seen. This goes back to Makayla's point. That doesn't seem like a dimension of the Mandalorian, unless he got put into a position where he had no choice but to do. That doesn't seem like the character that we're talking about here. I kind of see this guy as being almost like a Bo-Katan, right? Somebody that's trying to unite the Mandalorians, or kind of bring them back up in some way to their, previous levels of, I don't know. What's the word I'm looking for? Notoriety, I guess, if you will. Right. But it doesn't jive with me, and I'm having a big disconnect there. So my likely guess is it's my hopeful guess is it's Moff Gideon. But it's really hard not to, turn a deaf ear, if you will, to the fact that we did hear those spurs, and it that really narrows it down, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to, I got to be honest. This was my first reaction. My first reaction was it was Agent Coulson, and he was gonna pick her up and take her to what is it, Tahiti? Was that the program on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? to resurrect her? I got to be honest. I swear to God, that was my first thought and reaction when that came up. I'm like, oh, we're going to do the whole S.H.I.E.L.D. thing, and we're going to resurrect the character. And Agent
Talk
Coulson.
about a crossover.
That's my guess. Final answer. Yeah, it's the crossover we've always not really wanted or asked for, but we might get anyway.
Right. No one asked for it, yet you're getting it. So, all right. Well, we've got 3 episodes left, and I guess we'll find out here quickly enough. Maybe we don't.
That's the hard part to think of, man. Season's almost over.
More than halfway.
3 episodes. If you think about it, 3 episodes, what do we got? Maybe, let's just say 30 minutes. We've got about an hour and a half left of The Mandalorian before we're done.
Wow.
Until season 2 comes out.
Yeah. And we still have no idea exactly when season 2 would come, right?
No, that's, I don't know. And you would think by now, if they were going to do like a spring or even like a summer type thing, we'd be hearing something about it. Maybe I would think we would, because they'd have to start going in and recording.
Maybe after it's over.
Recording.
Yeah,
that's true. Maybe we get something there at the very end.
Yeah, maybe that last episode you get next. Since we're doing these recaps that drive Mike nuts, maybe at the very end of that we'll get a teaser for season 2 and have some idea when it's coming out. But yeah, I mean, with only half-hour episodes, 30 to 40 minutes, seems like we wouldn't have to wait like the whole year cycle like HBO or Netflix. Some of those guys make you wait, but who knows? I mean, these are pretty big budget.
Yeah, that would be gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. You have to wait an entire year before we get episode 9 of a 30-minute show. I mean, that just seems like...
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a Disney Plus perspective, you have a lot of other things to fill the gap. But yeah, from a Star Wars perspective, that's difficult to want to wait for, especially since we don't really know what's going on with Andor or anything else. Well, we got Clone Wars coming, I guess, in Feb. So
yeah, that's the next thing.
It stems it a bit, right?
Just one last thing. I'm going to go off script here on this because this is something I was thinking about on my 6-hour drive to and from Dallas today. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about The Mandalorian, and we talked about this before the show came out, because we were talking about the approach that they were taking with the, Netflix all at once versus, once a week kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I've really enjoyed the fact that they decided not to do the Netflix approach, because the conversations that we're having tonight between the 3 of us and the conversations that we've had in Discord over the last, 5-6 weeks now, that's what I really like the most. Yeah. There's a lot of time in there for us to digest and dissect and really kind of have these meaningful conversations, whether we agree or disagree about the show. And I just don't know that we would get that, or that it would be that to that degree had they just released them all in one big bang. I think what we'd have seen is people would have hyper focused on certain elements of all 8 episodes, and that's all. But really, we can, like, for us that, people like us that are doing the show and like to break things down, it gives us a lot of material. We can really get into the weeds and nitpick even the slightest details and spend, way too much time overthinking, overanalyzing. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's always been the fun part about Star Wars. Think about Star Wars when it used to come out, when the movies came out, and we didn't have direct to TV after 3 months of a movie release. We would spend literally years just talking about Star Wars and all the fine details of some particular scene that we saw. So it just feels like all that's kind of been rekindled, and I've just kind of appreciated. Do you have that, Makayla? You agree there?
Yeah, do you have that same kind of opinion on that one, Makayla?
Yeah, I do. I really like the aspect of bringing people over and having a watch party once a week, or once every 2 weeks when episodes come out. And you can't really do that with Netflix shows. It's you can sit here and, okay, let's binge watch for an hour and a half and then I have to leave. It's more of a community thing.
Mm-hmm. Get off my couch. You've been here 6 hours now. Right.
I got to be honest. I got to take a little bit of the other side on this one. And if they were an hour long, I would be 100% with you guys. But with these shorter half-hour shows, I am tending to trend just give them to me, because there's a bit packed in there. I wouldn't call it a lot packed into every episode, but there's a good bit, and I fully understand the perspective, and it gives us time to talk through these things, and it gives Mike something to do, which he's been bored. So it thanks for all of those things, but I think with the shorter episodes, I'm almost just kind of give them to me. If they were an hour, a little over an hour, or closer to an hour, then like the 40-minute episode we got from Bryce Howard was, nicer because there was a little more to dig into on that episode. But otherwise, I'm kind of impatient with shorter stuff. It feels not sitcom-y, of course, but it definitely seems a bit more episodic than an hour-long show would be.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't agree, but yeah, I definitely see your point. And the other thing too is that the inconsistency of the episodes too, and maybe that's not a bad thing, but it seems like it's as long as they need to be, because we've had some that have been like 27 minutes and others that have been like 40, and so it's not a prescribed 22 minutes or a prescribed 30 minutes, which has been kind of interesting and kind of cool too.
Yeah, and I like that. And none of them they all feel like they're, I think only once or twice, the early ones, and this is where I'll back my buddy Twan up here, the what was it? The montage scenes and the weird music. God, no, that didn't work, and it was kind of filler. But I think generally speaking,
dude, watch your mouth, boy.
Dude, it was.
I like the montage.
I know you do.
I'm on Jonesy's side. I'm sorry,
but yeah. I thank you.
Okay.
See, yeah, and
I'm a lot older.
Right, and Twan's super happy hearing all of this. He's got people in his corner now. But I think those are the things. Yeah, most of the episodes haven't really felt like there's been a whole lot of filler in there, and I'd like that. That is one of the things we were hoping not to have to be critical of getting meaningless stuff in between, and everything seems entertaining. Even some of the silly moments like Baby Yoda flipping switches and stuff was, kind of cute and things you could relate to, and didn't seem totally out of character for Star Wars, but just enough lightheartedness to infuse it into the show.
All right. Well, we'll try to come back. That was the thing about when we started doing this. Mike's doing the Mando Mondays, and I like the format because it's quick. It's like 20 minutes. So I think he did 22 on the last one, which is really awesome because you don't have to sit there and listen to us for an hour and a half. But at the same time,
don't have to listen to him for an hour.
Well, yeah, true. We don't listen to him for an hour, but we with the Rise of Skywalker, the timing is it's been kind of weird. We haven't really had a chance to kind of just sit down and make it part of our show. And obviously with less than 10 days to go before the Rise of Skywalker comes out, and all the shows that we'll be doing prior to and post, right? Yeah, 10. Like I think it's actually 9 days. What's today?
Yeah, it's 10 days.
The 9th.
9 days.
Yeah, so like 10 days. Yeah, it's crazy. But we really haven't had a chance to kind of squeeze in any Mandalorian talk. So I don't know. Maybe we can come back and do another one of these next week, and or a couple weeks from now, and kind of just get caught up and just reminisce, dive into a little bit different, maybe give you some different perspectives and Mike's point of view on Mando Mondays. So, okay, let's move on. We will get into, I guess, what the second part of our main topic. And we're going to go and talk about some of the, again, the Vanity Fair and the Entertainment Weekly news articles that were released. And so, when The Force Awakens came out, and certainly with The Last Jedi, there is a gentleman by the name of Anthony Breznican. They call him the Brez, right? And he was a part of, obviously, Entertainment Weekly. He's been there. He was there for years. And just recently, earlier this year, he made the move. He left Entertainment Weekly. There was a lot of shock and awe as to why, and I don't really understand the full details. I don't think I really care too much. I do like him, though, as a person. He's a very genuinely and sincere fan of Star Wars, and that came across in a lot of the videos that he's doing and his write-ups and just how passionate it was. I mean, you could tell as he wrote these articles. And so he made the move earlier this year. He left Entertainment Weekly, went over to Vanity Fair, and that's where he's been. And this is the first set of, I guess, released articles that he's done. We kind of got one each day for 5 days last week. And I thought, well, we can do a show on this because, historically, we've gotten a lot of great, juicy details from him while he was spending his time at Entertainment Weekly. However, it kind of quickly dawned on me, and I know Jonesy and Makayla, we've kind of all talked about this, that maybe the articles really weren't as juicy or as chock full of good nuggets as we've maybe gotten in the past, and not necessarily spoiler stuff, but just insight into some of the characters. These articles, and I'll turn it over to you here, Jonesy, to kind of pick this up, but they did feel a little bit lighter, maybe even a lot lighter than the stuff that he was doing over at Entertainment Weekly. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. These feel like they were, if we remember back to what he's done in the past, they were all released I believe they were all released at once, and they just had different sections to them, right? So it was like one giant article. And this is trying to do the same type of thing, right? They have a daily and they focus on a character or on something more specific, but they are exceptionally short. And there's really only, it really feels like there's only one or two lines in here that have anything that remotely feels like kind of what you were saying before, that really feels like there's some interesting, juicy type of detail. And that's kind of putting a stretch on it a little bit. I think some of the videos that have come out are getting a little bit closer to where you might find something more interesting. And I think that's primarily around J.J. Abrams. Mm-hmm. But the articles themselves are just falling really flat. And the EW articles in particular are just, I can't really criticize them harshly enough. I mean, it really feels like there's nothing there. Do you get the same impression, Makayla, or
I definitely
am I way off base here?
I definitely did. I mean, especially with the Entertainment Weekly articles, just small little paragraphs for a day worth of, information that I don't know.
I know, right?
Yeah, and I would say some of that stuff too. It's even the material, like it's in the Entertainment Weekly articles, there really wasn't anything groundbreaking, right? It's stuff that we probably derived from, trailers or, other press releases or interviews, that sort of thing. So again, it wasn't anything groundbreaking. Mm-hmm. So let's try to salvage what we can. I mean, there were a couple things in here, and what I'd like to do is just kind of take it over the course of the 5 days, and I listed out some of the more, obviously the articles for each Vanity Fair and Entertainment Weekly, and kind of threw out some things that we can maybe dig into. So let's start with day one, Vanity Fair. This is on Monday of last week, and that would have been, I don't know, what is that, the 2nd of December? The very first article they released was about Finn, and the article was pitched as we were going to, in the Rise of Skywalker, get some more information, some more background around the character of Finn. We know that Poe gave him the name, Finn, off of FN 2187, and they alluded to in The Force Awakens that at some point he was, a child, and he'd been taken from his family and brought over to the First Order. We know that he was in sanitation at some point, and finally made his way over into some kind of a ground force, grunt, so to speak, in the First Order ranks. But this article was kind of just talking and teasing that J.J. Abrams felt like, hey, we're going to go back to some of that stuff that we laid down and what little there was in The Force Awakens with his background, and they're going to kind of tease that out and explore it a little bit more with the Rise of Skywalker. And so, Makayla, for you, so we're kind of in your wheelhouse, right? This is the sequel territory stuff, but for Finn, what are you looking for here? What's been what have you theorized or come up with any kind of crazy theories on your own? If you're not, that's okay. But I mean, what are you looking forward to here? How much do you think we're going to get from Finn and his backstory?
I was actually surprised that this was going to be more more in depth in the next film. I didn't really think we were going to get more of his backstory. Something I'm kind of worried about this is this something he decides he needs to find out who he is, or does something happen in this next film that he has to find out, what his past was? Is this a self-exploring journey he wants to take, or that he has to take? And that's kind of what I'm looking forward to seeing with it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because it could mean two very different paths for him, right? And then you got to think about, okay, so how does he get put into that predicament where suddenly his the need to find out is being forced upon him, whereas it's more of a self-discovery type thing on his own. I think one probably lends itself to more obviously of a more dramatic angle, if he's being forced in that direction. And if it's not, though, then it really starts to think, you kind of wonder, okay, so where in the world are they going to, given what we've seen so far in the trailers, where in the world are they going to give him the amount of time he's going to need to kind of put that together and start, say, you know what, I know there's a lot going on, there's a big war going on, but I really need to find out who my parents are, and are we really going to get that side quest kind of thing? So, Jonesy, what do you think? Are you looking forward to getting more on Finn's background? And if so, what are your tinfoil hat theories here?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we get that kind of angle that Makayla laid out there, where, it's not necessarily the self-discovery, but you're kind of forced and you're thrust into it to where you learn that story, I think that's more interesting. And to your point, it's a bit more dramatic. I kind of felt bad because I think in Last Jedi, it really didn't feel like he got much development. There's some who might disagree with that, but from what we had in Force Awakens and some of the questions we had, and we don't need to answer everything, but I think this is a good thing as long as it doesn't get bogged down, doesn't bottle the story up at all. And as long as it can keep moving and again fits contextually, then I'm okay with that, and I'm all right with learning more about Finn. I think we even had some Poe comments come up as well from Abrams. And I think those are two characters that have felt still a bit, I don't know, hollow to me compared to what we've got with Rey and Kylo, and I mean even Snoke to an extent, right? And some of the other characters, we've not really been able to really dig into them much. Finn a little more in Force Awakens than anything else, but the others kind of fell a little bit flat for us, I think, in places. So I'm excited to revisit that as long as it can keep the story moving and not, weigh itself down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With Poe, I think we got, from the comic books, right? He had a whole run of comics, and
sure,
there's certainly an argument to be made. The point, I understand the point you're making. Those on screen would have been pretty limited, pretty thin. I think with Finn, we did get. I mean, so I get what Rian Johnson was doing. I mean, he did give us in episode 7 in The Force Awakens, he was the soldier on the run, right? He was thinking about himself, trying to get away. And the character development that I think Johnson brought forward for him was that he went from that character of me, and maybe Rey to suddenly there's somebody here that looks up to me, sees the good in me, sees me as a leader, and that being Rose. And from that, I think that was at the very end, we get that aspect of, I think he was laying the groundwork for what I'm hoping we get in The Force Awakens, in The Rise of Skywalker, where we get a Finn who's now truly a part of the first, or a part of the resistance, because he wants to be a part of the resistance, and he knows that he has an obligation to be a leader.
He's
and
confident
to be
in
someone.
confident in his place now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and I'm hoping that's where they go, and couple that with the fact that it looks like he's going to get a lot of screen time with Poe Dameron and Rey. He's going to. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing him almost be. I won't say that he's going to be the leader, because I think they're kind of still reserving that for Poe, in a lot of ways. But I think I would like to see moments in there where he really is kind of taking the lead, and even leading somebody like Rey, as strong and as powerful as she is, having them just kind of switching off. Maybe one moment Rey's leading and calling the shots, and the next minute, Finn's calling the shots, and then the next minute Poe's calling the shots. That would be kind of cool to kind of see that dynamic of them really working and being this kind of cohesive team that we just haven't really had an opportunity to see in either 7 or 8, which, it would speak a lot to his character growth and development.
And I think we really like to see the, I don't know how to say this right, the romance, Oscar Isaac and him and John Boyega get along so well off screen that it is really cool to be able to see them on screen and to see that kind of connection that they have, and to see what they can do with it in front of the camera and really, bring it to life. And with meaningful screen time, we liked what we saw early on with Force Awakens, but then we didn't really get a lot together. So bring them back together and give them opportunities to really show that relationship, and really just how enjoyable the actors are that they like to be with one another as well.
Yeah. Makayla, I'm going to ask you a question here about Finn before we move on to day 2. There's been some speculations, some rumors, some theories out there about whether or not he has any relation to Janna. Is there they look to have some kind of a relationship, and the way they've cut some of these trailers, there's a moment in there where you see Finn and Janna, and they're riding these steeds of some sort, right? These horses, these steeds. And as they ride off, it suddenly cuts back over to Rose, and it could be a completely different shot, but they've cut it so it looks like Rose is now, bothered by the fact that he's riding off with another woman. But I guess from your perspective, is this something that you're looking forward to seeing? Do you think there's going to be a bizarre love triangle there? Do you think it's platonic? Is it his sister? Do you think how much do you think they're going to really play with this whole kind of relationship dynamic between all three?
Well, I think with Janna, I really think that it's going to be relational, especially with that first, this first day in Vanity Fair, talking about his family, and he's got to, going to be finding more stuff about his past. And I do think it's more relational than anything.
So more of a brother sister kind of relationship, or cousins, or something there. Thing.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a bit much to introduce another love interest or speculation into the movie. I think at this point, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, this guy gets around, right?
Hey, single and
at that
ready
point,
to mingle.
I mean, he was he was hitting on Rey in The Force Awakens. Yeah, I think at one point he asked her, "Do you have a boyfriend?"
Yeah.
Then obviously he hooks up with Rose, or maybe Rose hooks up with him. I don't know. That was kind of weird, but whatever. She kissed him, and there's obviously something going on there. And now they're introducing another character, and then we haven't even touched on the Poe Finn relationship that it probably won't happen. I think J.J. Abrams finally came out and said that that's not going to happen. So don't get your hopes up high if you're looking forward to that.
I think Oscar Isaac confirmed that too.
It's a nice bromance.
Nice bromance. They're just buds, dude.
Yeah.
Just buds. Just like Jonesy and I.
And John Boyega's video, his Instagram thing to Oscar Isaac was fantastic.
Yeah.
Which one was that? Wait, which one was that one?
It's where he's like writing a letter to him.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, that was pretty classic. If you haven't had a chance to see that one, that guy's hilarious. I can't believe he put the time and effort. And I don't remember who it was, but I think it was Oscar Isaac who said it. He's like, I don't know where this guy finds a time. We're out here doing this on the press junket and doing these interviews, like literally getting slammed every 5 minutes doing press interviews, and then John Boyega somehow finds enough time to go sit there and shoot this footage to make this funny video about their relationship. So it was great. All right, well, let's move on from day one and let's talk about it's a controversial subject, but here we go. Let's talk about Reylo. So Reylo is day 2's Vanity Fair article, and it kind of just says, the article itself, the gist of it is there is a relationship there of some sort, and they don't, this article, again, it's pretty light, so there's nothing conclusive in any way. They just allude to the fact that we're going to see more of this manifest in some way. Now, obviously, Reylo fans are out there by the droves, and it's so. And I'm pretty neutral. I really, truly am. I've got plenty of people that I follow on social media that are pro Reylos, and I've got a lot that are anti Reylos, and I just kind of stay in the middle and keep quiet. But I would say that it's funny when I see this stuff out when it comes out, because when you see articles like this and you see comments that are made by like J.J. Abrams or even Daisy Ridley or Adam Driver, it's hilarious because when something is said, the diehard Reylo fans will take that and go, "See, I told you," and then the anti-Reylos will take it and go, "See, I told you." So it almost works. It cuts both ways, and it really just depends on how your perspective and your certain point of view and how you see all this. So, Makayla, I'm gonna get this. Let's just pull the Band-Aid off here. Are you a Reylo fan, pro Reylo, anti Reylo? Do you care? How important is this for you to see going into episode 9?
Well, okay, so let's start my journey here. No, in The Force Awakens, watching The Force Awakens, to me, I saw it and I immediately thought, oh, there's something going on between these two characters. And afterwards, all the things that happened online where everybody's like, oh my gosh, like, it's Reylo, like, this is great. And other people saying, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. I saw it as someone who watched the film and thought, oh, there's something obviously going on between these two characters. And I still think that. I'm not someone who's going to hate on people who don't like Reylo, and I'm also not going to go crazy over it. But as someone who's watched films, I know what, I like to think that I can sense the relationship between them might not be fantastic, but it's kind of got like the Beauty and the Beast elements, which I've always been a fan of, so I like it. Yeah,
that certain element of it. Yeah, I can see that. Jonesy, do you think we're gonna get a lot of Reylo in this one, or do you have any thoughts about, now that we've had 2 movies and we've had, I don't know how closely you followed some of the interviews both Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley have done here in the last week or 2, but has anything changed your mind in terms of where you think this is going to go and just how much of it we're going to get?
Well, I think if anything, some of the articles and videos that have come out have suggested I think they were doing this with Last Jedi too, is that there's something bigger between these two than some simple relationship or there's some deeper, meaningful connection. And it doesn't have to be this, romantic type of side to thing. And if it is, I don't really care one way or the other. But I think what most of us are looking for is like, what is this broader connection? What is this more, for lack of a better word, kind of intimate connection that they have between each other that is allowing some of these things to happen? Even when Snoke is gone, they're still able to have this the Force Skype stuff, right? And so what is that story behind that, and why is that possible is the part that I want to continue to focus on, and what I want them to resolve, at least on some level, to help us understand, how is it possible, but what does it mean? And I don't need the romantic side of it, but if there's a romantic side of it or something to that effect, then, so be it. But some of the video interviews and stuff seem to be suggesting that there is a lot more, and it sounds like they will. I mean, they have to explain some of this. I think Adam Driver may have said that too. He's like, you've got to resolve some of this stuff. And Abrams has been very much like that. It's the last one that you have to resolve some things. You can't leave everything hanging out there. So some things have to find their natural conclusion, even if you might not answer it in totality, which again, we tend to be generally okay with, because it opens the door for a lot of fun debate afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we've come a long way too. I mean, if you think about where we were at the end of The Force Awakens, there were a lot of people that were completely against the fact that they had any connection whatsoever, right? And fast forward to coming out of The Last Jedi, and I think there were a lot of people. I know there's obviously a vocal minority out there that are still anti everything, right? Not just Reylo, but just anti Disney and all that. But I think by and large, most people got on board after The Last Jedi with, okay, whether you think it's, platonic versus romantic, you cannot deny that there's something there. Johnson has made that very clear. I think Abrams is picking that up. I think we're going to see that. I mean, I know we're going to see that now because he's come out and said it. We're going to see this played out. And I'm really starting to not care. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, it's starting to take second place to me. I'm not so much focused on whether or not it's platonic versus romantic. I'm more focused around, how does that impact the redemption arc, right? How is it going to play into that? Is that where is it this relationship, whatever that relationship is that going to be the catalyst, in addition to probably other things as well, but is that going to be the catalyst for Ben's redemption? Is there something that's there? And I think for me, that's the more important question now that I have, because I'd like to see, and I know I'm come almost 180 degrees. If you go back and listen to the episodes, I really was not in favor of redemption arc for Ben, or for Kylo Ren. But as of today, I really kind of do want to see that, and I'm willing to kind of bury a lot of the stuff that I said in the past, and I want to see that happen as a result of his relationship with Rey, whatever that is, and I want to see it as a product of his relationship with his mom, or him mending his relationship with his dad, if that was to happen in some way, right? All of these things I just think are going to factor in, and so it just becomes, it's no longer a lead story for me, as much as it is just kind of more contextual stuff that needs to happen, I think, for the true story, which is what I want, which is some kind of redemption arc for him. So, yeah. All right. So let's, in the interest of time, let's move on to day 3, because here we got some interesting stuff. And generally, this is probably up your alley. We got, this article was really about force powers, and the whole article was not too lengthy, but I mean, you can really boil this down is to this article was, all it said was, we're going to get new force powers. And just recently, I think it was maybe 2-3 days ago, we got a new TV spot where we saw Rey do something that she's never done before. Yeah. You could argue that it hasn't been done before, not at least in that regards, but we're getting new force powers. Why don't you talk about what you saw, and do you think that's what we're going to expect, or do you think there's going to be even more that we haven't seen just yet?
Well, okay, yeah. So if you're super sensitive to spoilers, maybe fast forward a few minutes. But the scene was basically they're in the hangar of, I'm presuming a Star Destroyer or something like that, right? And they're trying to get on the Falcon, and Rey leaps for Finn. Finn's at the end of the ramp. They're taking off. She's trying to get out of there. This is the scene where Kylo looks like he's getting blown back and all the stormtroopers, and at least it seems to be the same scene. And she leaps, but it looks a lot like, Leia in Last Jedi, right? So the people who are freaking out a little bit think we're going to get more force flying. I don't know. Is that a thing?
Maybe
something like that. Yeah. And it does look like a pretty straight line of, zooming up towards the ramp. But I mean, we've seen force leaps before. We've seen force jumps before. So to say that this is something unique or something new or something to be irritated and pissed off about, I think is a bit over dramatic in that regard, because we have seen these types of abilities before. She's close enough to the ramp that we'd have to see the context of the movie to really understand what she's really doing. But force flying or whatever, it seems legit. I mean, if people can levitate and float themselves, why can't they do some of these other things? But so that's the one that's got people kind of up in arms a little bit, or a little excited one way or the other of whether or not this is something they want to see. But again, they keep touting, or at least flirting with the idea of other special abilities. And I'm not sure what that is. I think we're going to get some explanations of the force connections over the distance. I think that's probably got to be resolved on some level. So I think that's the one. Well, I don't really need to see new stuff, but I'd rather some of these other things have some sort of context and explanation behind them.
So there is another, not to quote Star Wars, there was another force ability that just recently aired, and I made this little GIF on it. I've been doing a lot of GIFs lately.
It's a GIF.
But now it's GIF. Okay,
this is a running joke.
Thanks.
What everybody says, I just do the opposite of for this GIF thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yep. Thanks. Appreciate it. But no, so there was one, and Makayla, have you had a chance to see, not my GIF, but do you know what I'm talking about? This came out on a TV teaser like 2 days ago. Okay. So here's what's happened. There's it's an extended scene from the battle between Rey and Kylo Ren on what appears to be remnants of the Death Star with, the waves crashing and that sort of thing. There's a moment in there where they were clashing lightsabers back and forth. And then out of nowhere, Rey holds up her left hand and she appears to stop Kylo Ren's lightsaber. So she's able to kind of hold him back using the Force. And this is the one that I think people are there. And no, don't get me wrong. I didn't want to cut you off because you're right. And I actually wasn't even thinking about that one. But yeah, you're absolutely right. 5-6 days ago when that clip came out, there was a lot of talk about Force flying and are we getting, Leia Poppins all over again, blah, 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 right? But this one is kind of spurred up a lot of controversy too, because number one, the way the clip is cut, if Kylo Ren was to kind of continue on with his swing, he would not have hit her. It's clear that there's enough space there that he would not have hit her with the lightsaber. But then two, it's also, the fact that, and the caption that I put when I posted this little GIF or GIF, whatever Jonesy's calling it now, the caption I put was lightsabers are now optional. Because essentially that's what she's done. She's now negated the fact she wouldn't even need a lightsaber at this point if she's able to actually hold off Kylo Ren and block him just using the Force only, which is essentially what's happened here. And at least on screen, I don't think we've ever seen this. I think the closest we've seen is Anakin and Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith when they do their, what is it? I don't know what they call it, but the windmill stuff where they're just kind of showboating with their lightsabers there. While they're doing it, and suddenly they kind of both throw their hands up and they're kind of locked in this Force push type thing. That's the closest thing that I could even think looks like it. But this definitely looks like she's able to hold him back and keep his lightsaber at bay, just simply using the Force. So overpowered, Makayla, do you think this is going to be what do you think is going on here? Do you think there's going to be more to this scene? Is this something that's exciting for you, or do you think we're going to get even more Force powers that we've not talked about yet?
Yeah, I hope there's more to that scene. And going back to the Force, flying thing with Rey jumping off of that ship, I really think that's just, this is my speculation, I really think that's just to throw us off. That it's not going to be about that whatsoever. There's going to be something totally new, out of the water approach to some Force powers. Obviously, they're not going to go too big and too crazy. At least I don't think so, because I think a lot of fans would, get their feathers ruffled with that. But I do think it's going to be something we've never seen before. Yeah.
She's not pulling down a Star Destroyer or anything like that. Yeah. And
like the overpowered of making lightsabers obsolete, I don't think they do that to Star Wars. And the fact of her using the Force like that, it's going to drain her pretty quick if that's what she's doing, So I don't know if it's going to be too overpowered. Right. They got to nerf it somehow.
And it's a bit like what Kylo. It's a bit like what Kylo was doing in Force Awakens, though, right?
Yeah,
stopping laser bolts. Yeah. He froze Poe, and I think he's able to basically knock Rey out. So we've seen some other abilities that this is kind of in that same realm of as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, and Albert, I'm going to have to call you on this because this is right up your alley. We have seen something like this before in the Old Republic with Satio Shan in the cinematic.
Oh, yeah.
Where she catches the lightsaber. Come on, man.
Oh, yeah. Don't even get me started. Like the coder stuff and Old Republic stuff, there's some really crazy abilities that we've never seen in canon. And I mean, Satele doesn't just block it. I mean, she just puts her hand out and absorbs it, right? The other thing that came to mind while we're talking about Force powers is we can't not talk about the father and Anakin when he holds up the lightsaber to him as part of the Mortis trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
He just dissipates it. Yeah, he's holding the blade and dissipates it, right? I mean, that's like, what in the world? I mean, that's super overpowered, right? But yeah, your point's well taken. There's been definitely other examples of it outside of canon, and then some. I mean, I made the joke about she's not pulling down Star Destroyers, but yet that's what happened in the Force Unleashed video game, right? As part of the old EU stuff, Legend stuff. I mean, come on. You think about Dark Empire. Yeah.
That the article could be referring to more of like what the general audience has never seen before, because there really is a lot of stuff deeper into this, series.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? I mean, the majority of Star Wars fans have only ever seen lightsabers blocked and all that. I mean, a lot of the newer Force powers they've seen have come from the sequel trilogy, right? But even then, it's been pretty limited. Anybody that's beyond that, that followed Legends or video games and all that stuff, you've kind of seen some wacky stuff out there. So,
well, you heard it here first from Albert Padilla that Rey is not the father; she is the mother.
Right. If you take nothing away from this episode, that's all I heard. I
just want to irritate Mike.
Yeah. Day 4. Let's the return of Lando, and this was another one that I was like really excited about because I'm like, oh yes, we're gonna get some Billy D. Williams, and the article again was just kind of like talking about that Billy D. Williams is back and he's excited to be back, and we all already knew that.
Well, to be fair, in the video, you did get Billy D. Williams where he was asked a question that he did not answer at all.
Right, just scooted right over it.
He just didn't even seem to hear it or care about it. He just decided, I'm going to answer the question I want to answer.
Yeah,
which is pretty typical Billy D these days.
Yeah. And I think the only question that I really had coming out of this was the L3 reunion. I know we've talked about this, Jonesy, so I mean, go ahead. I mean, feel free unless your opinions change. But I think that's going to be the moment for me with Lando is seeing him kind of reunited with L3, even if it's just for a moment, right? And maybe they don't even. Maybe it's very subtle and they don't hit you on the nose with this thing, and maybe like it's just him,
hey old girl type of thing.
Yeah, or exactly. Or maybe he says nothing. Maybe he just has his hand up on there for a split second. Has like a half a second of him looking at it, and then just goes right back into doing what he needs to do. But it doesn't have to be any more than that for me, but I am kind of looking forward to something like that. I think that would be a sweet moment. What's that, Makayla?
I said I think that would be a really sweet moment.
Yeah. But you think we're going to get anything else from that? Anything else from that reunion, or do you think Chewie and Lando are going to have a scene? Do you think that we'll get them talking about the funeral of Han Solo or reminiscing about Han Solo in any way?
I think it's going to be another one of those kind of things where like a look, not so much discussion about it. Kind of like how Luke and Rey had. It's like, where's Han? And it's just that look, I think that's what it's going to be more like.
That is a great point.
Yeah, maybe
these characters really don't need to have a lot of dialogue or anything to get their point across. And Jonas had talked at how expressive they can make Chewbacca's masks these days, and that's 100% true. And the way that the body language and everything else. So I'm 100% in agreement with her there. I don't think you have to do much or even say anything if you don't want to.
So and that was kind of for day 4. That was probably the most interesting thing for Vanity Fair. But the Entertainment Weekly had an interview with with Adam Driver. And this was probably, out of all the stuff that came out last week, it was probably the most interesting and intriguing thing for me, because in that interview, they asked him about whether or not, they asked her his opinion on whether or not Ben Solo would be redeemed, right, if he was going to be going through this redemption arc. And he responded and retorted back with, what does he have to be redeemed for? Which I thought was an interesting take.
I like
coming from Adam Driver. And I do like it, but it kind of I don't know. It's like, is he that much into the character, or is he making a valid point that we don't need it?
That's what I thought. I really thought it was a classic, like, my character is right because I am my character type thing.
Is that how you saw it, Jonesy, or do you think he was speaking as Adam Driver and saying, so what? He doesn't. What if he doesn't have a redemption arc? We don't need that.
It's a blend, right? I think some of it was more that the perspective that people give to Kylo Ren is their external opinion rather than what the character might think their position really is, and that's where he was coming from, as knowing the character probably better than any of us, and of course he's seen the movie, but I think that's where he was coming from, though, of like, this is a character that everyone thinks it. We hear it in the trailer from Rey. Everybody thinks they know who you are, and I think he probably views that for Ben Solo and Kylo Ren as well. Of everything that he has done has been for a very specific purpose, and there's nothing wrong with what he's doing. So what would he have to attune for? And from his perspective, that might very well be the case. Now, if you believe that, then it makes it really difficult to give you somewhat of a traditional redemption arc, right? And to have that moment where it actually makes you feel like you did something redeemable. But I think the alternative to that, though, I think it largely depends on the relationship with Rey, and maybe Leia to an extent as well. But I think it's probably going to come to Rey, where there's something else that makes him make a choice that may not be firmly in the redemption space, but you could see that he made the right choice, at least from our point of view.
Yeah. The him making that comment, I think what stands out for me is like, so let's just assume that he is redeemed in some way in the Rise of Skywalker. Then it really makes me question why he would say that, why he would make that comment. But I guess we'll find out here in 10 days. Let's talk about there was a bit in there from Entertainment Weekly talking about Daisy and Carrie, and again, it was pretty light. There really wasn't anything groundbreaking. It was just talking about how it was not weird, but it was surreal, right? That they were able to kind of use a lot of the footage from episode 7, some episode 8, whatever it was that they've used. And Daisy spent a lot of time talking about how she would film these scenes and knowing that they were going to put in Leia later on, and so it wasn't too different than sometimes they film these scenes for with another actor, and that actor is doing another movie or has other commitments, and so they can't, and so they end up shooting half the shots from one angle, and then later on they come back and put that character back in. And so she said, it didn't feel any different, didn't feel weird, but she did mention that now that she's seen it, it was kind of surreal to kind of see how it was all put together and that sort of thing. So again, nothing really groundbreaking there. And I don't know if you guys
can I ask you guys a question though?
Yeah.
So the interviewer kept bringing up episode 7 and 8 footage of Leia, but J.J. Abrams only talks about episode 7 footage. Mm-hmm. I mean, did y'all pick up on that? And I think Abrams has talked about 7 and 8 before, but now I'm really questioning that, because the only time I ever hear him talk about her, it's really just the Force Awakens footage. So do we really think there's anything from Last Jedi that is really usable in this movie, or is it exclusively from episode 7?
I think because the times are so similar. I mean, it's one movie to the next, so that Leia's in the same outfit. She's got the same, get up. I think it's possible, but like you said, he's really only been talking about the Force Awakens footage.
Yeah, I don't, I would imagine they probably are going to use whatever whatever works,
can. Right?
They don't have much to work with. And so, whether it's from 7, whether it's from 8, I don't really know. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot, to be honest. Excuse me. I just don't know that they've got that. I mean, I could be completely wrong. Maybe they filmed, 5 minutes of footage, which is a lot, actually, if you think about it, right? In the grand scheme of a movie, 5 minutes of anything is quite a bit of time to spend on any one particular scene or any one particular character. But if they're able to kind of salvage 5-10 minutes here, I think it's quite a bit. That's substantial. And you've got to think that's probably coming from multiple movies rather than just one. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how much they use and how they use it. I got to say, in the trailer, there's that one moment when she's kind of holding the medallion and the camera's kind of panning in on her. There's something that looks odd there. And I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know if it's just because she's not really there, and they've put, she's probably, they've superimposed her on, the jungle background. And hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about here. But every time I see that one clip, and they use it quite a bit, it just looks odd. And that's the stuff that I was worried about going into this, is if they weren't going to use another actress, or they weren't going to just write her out completely and try to use footage like this, am I going to be so hyper-focused on, trying to figure out whether or not is she really there? How did they manipulate the footage? That sort of thing. What I don't want to happen is I don't want to be pulled out of the movie like I was at the very end of Rogue One, where, she says hope. The first time I saw that, I was like, whoa, that looks really odd. It doesn't look like her. But I don't know. That may just be being weird as usual.
Well, we know that they're going to use body doubles. I mean, they said as much in some of the video interviews, I think. So, I mean, hopefully they do what makes the most sense. Like, so to your point, if they are going to digitally insert her performance into another scene, it has to look natural. It has to work. And if it doesn't, then you say, okay, well, if I need these close-up shots of hands or something like that, then let's just go and refilm those, because you can get hand stunt doubles, I guess. Or you can fudge your way through some of those, like the behind her head shots. I think those are all probably a body double. Those are a new actress that's just filling the role, and I think those are okay to do, because we forgive a lot of that stuff too, right? Because if you do it seamlessly, you don't even notice it, but it's also just, it's practical, right? If you want the emotion in the scene and you didn't record it, there's a way you can kind of fudge your way through it, and it still has the same weight and same impact.
Makayla, days 5, we got one quick article. It was kind of messy for me, but it was talking about Finn, Rose, and Rey and that dynamic. And we've talked a little bit about this already with John Boyega's character, or John Boyega and his character of Finn. But he made it kind of clear that he's not even sure that he knows what's going on, or Finn doesn't know what's going on, because, at one moment he was hot for Rey, and then, Rose is coming on to him, and, we know a year has passed now since The Last Jedi, and so we don't know what that dynamic's going to be like. But how interested are you in this, bizarre love triangle between Finn, Rose, and Rey? And are you looking forward to seeing that play out, or are you past it or over it at this point?
So when it comes to like Finn and Rose, I don't know if you guys have finished reading Resistance Reborn. That's actually talked about a little bit in the book. And again, if you haven't read it, like, go read it yourself. But there's an instance there when Finn's like,
I haven't had a chance to finish it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I haven't had a chance to finish it. Jonesy, did you finish it?
No.
Okay, so no, take it. You can take the lead on this. So, and feel free to get into it as a little bit. So what happens? Do we get more? You said we get more of the relationship, but is it conclusive in some way, or is it just kind of left open and it picks up?
It's the lack of a relationship. Actually, it's brought up. The kiss is brought up, and I don't remember if it's Rose or Finn, but it's one of the two, and they say, oh, it was just in the heat of the moment kind of thing. It didn't mean anything, and so you can kind of go into the Rise of Skywalker with that thought too. They didn't think it meant anything. So I think that's going to be interesting. Yeah. And when we're talking, kind of going back to Jannah too. So if that is more of a love interest, it's not going to be quite as a love triangle as some people would think.
Yeah. And I think during The Last Jedi, it was after the movie obviously had come out, in I think when we were breaking down either Rose and or Finn, we did talk about that kiss not being, truly one of the, a kind of a passionate moment and all that. It was truly in the moment. I think, I don't know if it was myself, Mike, or Jonesy, whoever it was, one of us said it did feel like it was just kind of like, hey, we just survived something together. I don't know how to say thank you. And it was very impulsive, and maybe there was some regret after that, or, some second thoughts about whether that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, but I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here. The moment on the Falcon, though, where he's taking care of her and showing care and compassion, certainly suggests something else, though, right? I mean, maybe not some deep romantic type of deal, but at least some form of genuine caring, to where Rey noticed it, right? She kind of smiled over there at them, and maybe a sad smile, but that's where I think it's just I got to be honest, it'd be a little bit disappointing if that relationship completely fell apart, right? I mean, I get we had kind of that with Han and Leia between A New Hope and Empire, which made it more interesting when they got together. But I think with this one, they set it up in a certain way. It would be a little bit disappointing if it didn't keep those characters at least somewhat aligned, or where they would come back to each other. And I definitely don't want a love triangle, to be honest with you. There's a lot of movie to get through. I don't need a love triangle to kind of go with it, but it would be a little disappointing if they just dropped this altogether without, especially if they don't have any kind of explanation for it.
Yeah.
True. And who knows, we may come out of the movie and still have a lot of questions that go unanswered, but maybe they pick that up in a novel again, or pick it up in comics or whatever else. There's probably an opportunity. Because, I mean, even though the saga's coming to an end, I mean, make no mistake about it. I mean, these characters are still going to be around in some way, in some form, right? One way or the other. So there's plenty of opportunity for them to kind of pick that out without having to get into, we're going to have to explain this and introduce all these new characters and wrap up, 9 movies of a saga and figure out how we're going to explain Palpatine being back. I mean, there's just a lot going on that this is probably going to take, third, fourth fiddle to the, some of the bigger story beats that they're trying to kind of write in and kind of tie up. So. All right. And then finally, the last thing from day 5, we've got, and this wasn't, again, not a big shocker, because I think I think we called it out on this show at some point, but there was the article was really about Ralph McQuarrie. For those of you who aren't familiar with who he is essentially the person that gave us the vision of Star Wars, everything that we know in terms of the look and the feel of Star Wars itself. I mean, this guy, they get in. It was kind of a neat article because it did speak about how his background was into space and technology, but he was able to create and bang out some amazing art pieces and concept art for like jungle backgrounds for Dagobah when he did that stuff, and there was really like the Mustafar stuff and all that. There really was no kind of limit in terms of just how broad this guy's imagination was and how he's able to kind of convey a lot of what George Lucas had in mind, and sometimes didn't, right? He just went to Ralph McQuarrie and just said, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I need. And McQuarrie would take a lot of creative liberties and kind of come up with stuff that just seemed to fit exactly with what Lucas was looking for. And so he, as much as we credit George Lucas for the vision and the story and all that, a lot of this is McQuarrie's work, and we see that carried on. And Jonesy and I talked about this in the show. The really cool thing about Star Wars is everything gets used at some point, right? Nothing goes unused, whether it's stuff from Rebels. There was a lot of work that they were able to kind of go back and revisit and bring into the Rebels series when that was out. We see that today in some of the Resistance stuff. We see it in The Mandalorian now, but it's just like this evergreen product that all this work, all this stuff that Ralph McQuarrie had did so many years ago is still relevant, and we still see it in all of Star Wars that comes out today. And this The Rise of Skywalker is no exception, because there is one, and I'll even go so far as to call it iconic, because it is one of those pieces that always stood out to me that we never really saw until The Force Awakens. But it's this image of a Y-wing that is kind of flying at an early concept of the first Death Star, and that Death Star actually looks more like Starkiller Base. But in the trailer that we've gotten for The Rise of Skywalker, we get to actually see that image come to life, which is, I mean, I think it was one of the first trailers, I think, or the second trailers. And again, we talked about it on this show, I think, but it just stood out because we knew what that image looked like. So the point of that article was just really kind of talking about McQuarrie's work and just how it continues to pay off, and how they're able to kind of go back to that to kind of keep cranking out this true holistic vision of what the Star Wars universe looks like. So, and the question I really have here, and this is kind of fan service for myself and the self-indulging, but Jonesy, do you have any particular favorite piece of Ralph McQuarrie that you've always liked and enjoyed? And I guess a follow-up question is, did it translate over into movies or anything else, and were you happy with it? Oh, yeah. So I've got the Art of Ralph McQuarrie, gigantic. I can't even call it Oh, you have that thing?
Oh, dude, it's amazing. Yeah, and
that's like $200 or something like that, or $250. At least It was at one point.
Yeah, so I got it when I was at, I think it was Dallas Sci-Fi Expo. It used to be called Star Wars Fan Days. And I think it was right after he passed away, and I bought it from, I believe his son was there. And so I actually bought it from him, and worth every penny. I didn't get the autograph version of it, but it was really, it's a fantastic book just to thumb through and look at it. We get into the art books all the time, right? But this is like the mother, this is the mecca of all art books, because there's just so much steeped across his entire career. And of course, Star Wars is a big part of that. Man, there are so many iconic ones. Any of the X-Wing trench run shots from A New Hope are fantastic. The speeder bikes on Endor, that artwork is fantastic. But my favorite tends to be from Empire Strikes Back, where you've got the walker and you've got the snow speeder running around it with the tow cable. And I've had it as backgrounds and wallpapers on various computers or phones or whatever. And anytime, of course, Hoth is so iconic anyway, because we had really nothing like that forever and ever. But that one scene with the AT-AT and the snow speeder was always been my favorite piece. But man, so many to choose from.
Yeah, it's AT-AT, by the way. That's what the kids call it these days. Makayla, are you a big Ralph McQuarrie fan? Do you follow the work? Do you have a favorite piece by chance?
So I've always liked Ralph McQuarrie. It's hard to choose a favorite piece. He's just, as I'm an artist myself, and so just seeing his artwork in general just gives me so much joy. Like, it really is just magnificent. The things he pulls out of his head is fantastic.
Yeah, I personally, I think the one that always stood out for me is that early concept art of Darth Vader, where he's kind of holding the lightsaber and Luke Skywalker is just standing there. And I don't know. There's something about that one. In Vader looks obviously a little bit more, I don't know, feral. I don't know what the right word is.
Menacing,
Menacing, yeah. And I think that's why it always stood out to me. Because I mean, I remember early on, as obviously as a kid, really a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, seeing that and being just, completely enthralled by that character. And even, I had this like perverse obsession with Darth Vader as a child. He scared the crap out of me, but yet, I really wanted to dress up as him as Halloween, or I always wanted the figures and wanted to play with his character or the little action figures and all that. But at the same time, he scared the bejesus out of me, So that particular piece stood out a lot for me. And then the other one that stood out are some of the early concept art for the droids. I just like the look of that. And I was really happy when Rebels came out, and there was a particular episode, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of it now, but excuse me, there was a particular episode where they had taken one of those early concepts of C-3PO, or at least one of the humanoid looking droids. And that particular model or that look never really made it into any of the movies at all, because it just stands out a little bit more than the other ones. I won't say it doesn't feel like it's part of Star Wars, but it just was very different. And they found a way to bring it into Rebels. And so being able to see that brought to life in that particular episode was pretty enjoyable. And it was a lot of joy for me to kind of finally see it. So,
but you really hit it on the head though, Albert. What you see on the page from the artwork is so closely mirrored with what we actually get on screen that it's just unreal. And it just shows you how inspirational his work was. And I know they had him and Lucas worked together tirelessly, and especially with the model shop and things like that. But man, for that direct correlation with some of these really, I mean, where these designs come from out of his head, and some of the things he landed on. If you think of like Y-Wings in particular, right, from a model kit perspective, that's got to be somewhat challenging to put together and make sure it doesn't fall apart. But just to see that direct correlation. I mean, not everything went quite that way. Chewbacca and Yoda, went through some iterations, of course, but so many of those ships and vehicles, I think in particular, what we really have cemented in our brain, just that they were able to replicate them so closely in the movie is really phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was,
speaks to the strength of the design. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as a side note, if for those of you, and this is not uncommon knowledge, but they did touch about on this in the article itself. But originally that the trench battle and the space battle on the Death Star as part of Episode 4 was supposed to have a bunch of Y-wings as opposed to X-wings, and just through after they started doing some of the planning and all that, they kind of realized that for whatever reason, either the Y-wings didn't look as great or as cool as the X-wings, or I forget now what it was, but that was a fundamental shift. So when you see a lot of that original artwork of the Death Star battle from Episode 4, it was a lot of Y-wings more than it was X-wings, and we obviously know that not to be the case. There's one group that goes in, I think the Gold Leader and all that, but it's just stuff like that that's always intriguing. And going back to Star Wars and why it's successful, if you think about it, it's a culmination of just a lot of amazing things all happening at once and all clicking at the same time, because you've got somebody like George Lucas with the vision. You've got Ralph McQuarrie with the artwork and design, right? You've got John Williams with the score, right? We talk about that a lot on this show, that score in itself is just monumental.
I can't believe we did an article on that.
I know, right? We didn't get anything on what that's going to look like. Which, that's a whole show right there.
And you got to throw Ben Burt in there too, right?
Right. The sound effects from Ben Burt. You got to talk about the actors themselves, right? Especially like in the original trilogy, for all of those characters those actors to, give us the character performances that they gave us had to be spot on. Otherwise, it turns into a hokey, fanfic kind of movie. Which, a lot of people were really scared about when it originally came out, was whether or not this was going to work, because on paper it sounded ridiculous, right? And so, again, you have all these things coming together at arguably, the top of their games coming together, and it just worked. And I think that's what speaks to the kind of the magic and why we get so enthralled with Star Wars, and, what kind of set that foundational success for it to kind of give us what we have today, coming out with, The Rise of Skywalker. All right. That's enough of that. That was kind of it. That was a fun little run. I see we were able to turn a show into 5 days of fluff.
Yeah, look at that.
You said we couldn't do it. Yeah. So let's talk about what do we got? Network plugs, film appraisers. We talked about them. Mando Monday. So by the time this comes out, Chapter 5, The Gunslinger. So Mike I think we mentioned it earlier. He put together a 22-minute episode on that one. Take a listen to that. It's great. He does a good job of kind of breaking down and a lot of different theories, and especially spend some time talking about the mysterious character that we spoke about, whether that's Moff Gideon or Boba Fett or anybody else at that point. So if you get a chance, take a listen to that. And obviously that's is he doing that? Yeah, he's doing that on Monday. So
he's staying true to the title. It's the one thing that he does on time. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing. And that's only because that logo. So that logo's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Then Smoking and Drinking in Space, of course, has been doing their Star Wars-a-thon, which is, again, not safe for work. So if you don't like language or you have kids in the car, you might either defer it or maybe go listen to us instead. I don't know.
Yeah, but get new kids, whatever.
But yeah, it's an enjoyable show, a little more lighthearted, not quite like what we do. So it's a little bit different. So I encourage you to go check that out. You can get all of the shows over on earglumedia.com.
Nice. Way to plug that.
Yeah.
And we've only got one shout out that I want to touch on. This is to David. I think it's on Instagram. It's his handle is I Did Shave.
Nope.
Which that's not Jonesy, but David, I Did Shave. Thank you for listening. He gave us, I think he messaged us and sent us a picture of just how many hours he spent on Spotify listening to the Cantina cast, and it was a lot. So thank you for the follow, and thank you for your continued support and listening. And thanks for listening on Spotify, because we were pretty excited when that rolled out. And it's nice to hear that people are picking up the show on there as well.
Yeah, appreciate it, David. Okay,
well, that's going to do it for episode 303. Jonesy, thank you as always for being back. And Makayla, thank you for coming on the show. Hope you had a good time.
I did.
Did you have fun?
Yes.
Good. Well, we if you guys want to join the three of us, we are in Discord. We'll have a link there in the show notes for you guys to do so. So come on in and feel free to start waxing any theories, or if you want to argue with, any of us or Mike or whoever else that's on our network.
Bring it on.
There's plenty of opportunity to start some very constructive criticism and feedback and discussion in the Discord channel. We'd love to hear from you and see you there as well. So we'll be back in just a couple of days here to kind of put together the next show on the Rise of Skywalker. I don't know what we're calling that just yet, but we're going to break down some of the characters. We'll start getting into theories about what we hope to see or maybe expect to see with some of the characters, some of the main characters, and some of the main plot elements and things that we may have seen from the trailers and TV spots and all that. So it should be a lot of fun. And then we've got finally the final hype show, which will be out sometime next week, just before the launch of the movie. And then obviously once the movie comes out, we'll have plenty of coverage and reaction stuff for you to follow as well. So we're going to be pretty busy here very soon. Jonesy, any last words before we go?
No, let's get out of here before Kylo tries to force Skype me.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Let's hope that doesn't happen. All right. We'll see you guys next week.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.